Welcome all to this series of webinars in celebration of the Mothers and Auroville's birth anniversary. This series continues until February 28th, Auroville's birth anniversary, and is part of the Auroville Festival being hosted by the Auroville Foundation in collaboration with La Grace Center, the USA. My name is Anu Legrand. I am from Auroville, and it is my honor to be your moderator for today's session. To begin, let us come together for a moment of silence. So today's event has two distinguished panelists, His Excellency R. Ravi, Honourable Governor of Tamil Nadu, and Chairman of the Auroville Foundation. And we have Mr. Vishal Sharma, Permanent Indian Ambassador of UNESCO India. We also have Chandresh Patel and Jaya Begreen Clausen, who are both residents of Auroville. The topic for today is the practical manifestation of the city and the role of UNESCO and the Government of India. So far, the webinars have been exploring Auroville's charter, its spiritual significance, the soul of nations, and Shri Aurobindo's Savitri. Today, we'll take all that along and graduate to the city, which integrates all these elements for its manifestation. So for today's topic, practical manifestation of the city of Auroville and the role of the UNESCO and the Government of India, it is my honor to present to you His Excellency R. N. Ravi. Thiru Ravindra Narayan Ravi was born in Patna, did his master's in physics in 1974. After a brief stint in journalism, he joined the Indian Police Service in 1976 and was allotted the Kerala cadre. He served in Kerala in various capacities, including districts for over a decade, and then in different parts of the country in various capacities. While serving in the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, he led several anti-corruption crusades against organized criminal gangs, including the mining mafias in the country. While in the Intelligence Bureau, the IB, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, the premier intelligence agency of the country, he served largely in theaters of insurgencies and violence, including the Jammu and Kashmir, the Northeast, and the Maoist-infested regions. He has also specialized in the dynamics of human migration in South Asia and worked extensively on the political sociology of border populations. He played a crucial role in conflict resolutions in areas affected with ethnic insurgencies and brought several armed rebel groups into peace. He was the architect of India's international cooperation in counter-terrorism and intelligence sharing. After retirement from government service in 2012, he wrote regular columns in national dailies. He was appointed as the chairman of Joint Intelligence in the Prime Minister's office, where as the head of the intelligence community, he coordinated and guided the agencies to meet the national security needs of the country. He was appointed as the center's interlocutor for the Naga peace talks in August 2014. Within a short time, he could achieve a paradigm shift in the peace process by bringing the issue from abroad to the land and its people and made it truly inclusive by making the genuine stakeholders an integral part to it. Soon, all the rebel armed groups signed agreements for a settlement of a 7-decade-old separatist insurgency in the Indian Union and the ambit of the constitutions of India, which could usher peace in Nagaland and the rest of the northeast of India. He was appointed as Deputy National Security Advisor in October 2018. He served as the governor of Nagaland from August 20 19 till September 2021. He has also now been appointed as Governor of Tamil Nadu by the Honourable President of India and assumed office on the 26th as the 26th Governor of Tamil Nadu on the 18th of September 2021. He is currently the Chairman of the Governing Board of Auroville. So welcome, Dr. Ravi. Please, it's over to you now.
Namaskar. On this week-long celebration of Auroville Festival, marking the occasion of birthday of our Holy Mother and it's the Auroville Township, I would like to thank and congratulate everyone associated with this festival, especially the Secretary of Auroville Foundation, Tirumati Jayanti Ravi, who has been driving this very, very passionately. Friends, this city of Auroville, may call it village of Auroville, is essentially a dream of mother to practically realize the vision of Shri Aurobindo, the vision of creating a set of people who are committed to the service of the divine consciousness. Shri Aurobindo, we all know that his spiritual accomplishments, he himself did not move around propagated, unlike many sages and seers of this country. Towards the later part of his life, he actually secluded himself into intense meditation, which eventually led to the realization of the vision, which was passed on to Mother. And she wanted to create a small township which would be a manifestation of that vision. That's why the charter of Auroville, the first and foremost charter is that Auroville belongs to humanity, but to live in Auroville, one must be a willing servitor of the divine consciousness. The rest, the three charters, it just follows from it. The question is, what is the divine consciousness that Rishi Shri Aurobindo had realized and Mother talked about? Even Rishi Aurobindo talked about it in his seminal works. Is the divine consciousness going to temples, mosques, church, synagogues, and going through the rituals of religion? No. This is a spiritual exercise. And on this, there has been, at least I have seen, and I have realized that there is a considerable degree of confusion in understanding that divine consciousness. Many people say that Sri Aurobindo's divine consciousness, the concept of divine consciousness, the vision of divine consciousness in the realm of spirituality is as complex as the Einstein's theory of relativity in the domain of physical science, talking about the curvature of time and space. Nevertheless, what Sri Aurobindo said when he talked about his vision is actually what our rishis and seers of Bharat had realized and articulated at the time of Rig Veda. Its time is different to different people, different estimations. Some people would say it was about 18,000 years ago, but there is a general consensus that this was 6,500 years before the Common Era. The rishis of Bharat had realized three fundamental truths. One, there is a creator. There is one creator who has created this entire creation. Second is the organic unity of the creation, the oneness of creation. Beneath the apparent mind-numbing diversity, no two entities, no two persons, no two things are exactly alike. Look at the human beings, 7 billion and odd. No two are alike. And similarly in the animal kingdom, plant kingdom, with all these diversities, they are all integrally connected with each other. It's like millions of trees, leaves on a tree. Each leaf is different from the other, and yet they are all organically connected with the tree. The tree of creation is one. And from this, a corollary goes, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that the world is a family. The world is a family is not a political statement. It is a spiritual realization, which our sages and seers have articulated at least 8,500 years ago. So, one creator, organic oneness of creation. And the third truth was that this creation is governed by immutable laws. It's not arbitrary. Days and nights, change of seasons. All the acts of creation are governed by immutable laws. Now, this realization of these three fundamental truths was called Rit Ka Siddhant, principles of Rit, and that is why we got Rig Veda. But this realization was, this spiritual realization was limited to the sages and seers and those people, those who could evolve themselves to that plane where they could appreciate it. Now, Rishi Sri Aurobindo, in his lifetime, he witnessed two devastating wars in the world. Millions and millions of people across the world perished. He also witnessed that how humanity, they have acquired enormous destructive power. It was during that time that atomic explosion had happened and millions of people have perished. Unprecedented power at the disposal of human being. He witnessed an anarchy of ideas and ideologies. People in the world segmented along various ideas and ideologies: socialism, communism, capitalism, Fabian socialism, democracy, liberal democracy, all kinds of. And such a heavily divided community of human beings in the world, equipped with such devastating power, destructive power. The question that Rishi Aurobindo was confronted with was, is self-destruction the destiny of humanity? Is it going to be over now? Going to destroy them? Humanity is going to destroy itself? Is this the destiny? And then he got the realization that no, it is not the destiny. Because in the process of evolution, the human beings are yet one stage short of its eventual evolution, complete evolution. Humans have reached the third stage today. A stage when the matter, which is called Jada, when Chetan, the consciousness, creeps into some matter, the Jiv emerges, life emerges. Jad, Jiv. And when the consciousness, the reasoning, the manas, it gets infused into that Jiv, that became humans. A thinking element, a thinking creature with mind, with intellect. And this intellect, which is essentially what is called Adi Bhautik Buddhi, this intellect which is rooted in the understanding around the Panchabhuta, the five great elements, it is essentially limited. It is not complete. Any knowledge, any understanding reached out of only this Panchabhuta, the Adi Bhautik Buddhi, is not a complete knowledge, is complete Gyan. The step above, what is Sambuddhi, is a spiritual experience, Adhyatmik Anubhav. Sahaj Gyan, what is called in our text, it is Sahaj Gyan. It is not based on calculation of mind. And this Sahaj Gyan was revealed to our rishis about 8,500 years ago, which was articulated in Rig Veda. But it was limited to a select few who could reach that level of evolution. It was not the mass that could reach up to that level of evolution. And Rishi Arvind, he thought that the next destiny of human being is to reach that level of super consciousness. Jad, matter, infused with consciousness is Jiv, life. Consciousness with intellect is humans, manas. When manas evolves to next level, what is called ati manas, when it fuses with a spirituality, then mano becomes mahamano. Now in the Vedic period, mahamanos were those rishis, those sages, those who reached that stage. Because when you reach that stage, you see the unity of the entire creation. Then to say that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the people around the world, all are a part of a family, is not just an intellectual or a political statement. It is a very, very simple, it is Sahaj Gyan. You are able to relate yourself with others. And then the differences, the anarchy of ideas and ideologies dissolve. It's like a light falling on darkness. Darkness disappears the moment light falls. Shri Aurobindo was of the view that this vision, if it can be realized by a set of people, because he thought that this level, according to him, this next level, which is the ultimate level of evolution, is not going to be automatic. It has to be engineered. This transformation, this final leap of Mano becoming Mahamano is to be engineered. And for that, a set of people with a similar orientation, a spiritual orientation, they come together and they practice, they work towards creating a community of Mahamanos. This was Mother's dream behind creating Auroville. That Auroville will be a place where people who are of a similar disposition, a spiritual disposition, would come together. That is why the first condition in the Auroville Charter is one must be a willing servitor of divine consciousness. This consciousness which sees divinity in all And so one relates with other irrespective of race, caste, creed, geography, religion, everything. This is Bharatiya Sanatan Dharma, Sanatan Darshan. Once this community starts building itself, it is a continuous exercise. The people have to continue practicing to reach that level of evolution. That manas becoming ati manas, the consciousness becoming super consciousness, and mano becoming mahamano. And that way, the super conscious mahamano is also part, this Jad, Chetan, and Manas are within that. As for example, we are human beings, thinking equipped with intellect, but we are also matter. We also have Chetana, but we also have intellect. The next level that comes will also have all the three elements, but that level of super consciousness will be so transformative that this world will become, creation will become a paradise. And that is the ultimate destiny of humanity. That is why he said that it has to be a continuous exercise. The life itself is a yoga. Yoga is essentially what is called actually Sanslishta yoga. You know, there are two ways of looking at things. The Western, epistemology believes in analysis, Vishleshan, where you break everything into parts and then you analyze it, try to understand. Bharatiya way of looking at things have been what is called Sanslesham, synthesis. You look into the totality. When you look into totality, we all know that whole is more than sum of parts. So this yoga is essentially to look at the things in totality, the comprehensive view of creation. And for that comprehensive view, evolution of intellect to the level of super consciousness, that is spiritual realization, is a must. Now, what is the role of Government of India in this? When this township was created, it was thought that the people coming to it would be able to create it themselves. There is no need for any external intervention. It should be. But somehow, we all being human beings, we are trapped in our own desires, our own egos, our own, you may call it weakness or human frailties. That anarchy which Sri Aurobindo had seen outside the world, it has started manifesting in that small community of people here as well. And so there was intervention. Emergency ordinance came, regulations came. Finally, Auroville Foundation Act came. Ideally, it should have been by the people, by the Aurovillian themselves. And it has to be by the Aurovillian themselves, there's no doubt about it. What is the role of the government? Government of India. The Government of India is only acting as a catalyst because it's a half a century down the line that we have yet to see that vision. That community of people, a small number of people, willing servitor of the divine consciousness, seeing oneness in all, proving themselves as an example to the rest of the world that look, here on earth there is a small patch and a set of people who see each other as one. That would be a message to the whole world. That would spread the sense of that is Mahamano to the rest of the humanity. And that would be the ultimate destiny, and that would save the world. But it didn't happen. Unfortunately, we have seen a large number of groups, factions. Now, these are all at a very subordinate level. It is not the level which Sri Aurobindo had imagined or visioned. We are still trapped at a very, very subordinate level. It has to evolve. But this evolution cannot be done by the government. What Government of India can do? Government of India has to do and will do the physical aspect of it, because mother had given a design what the township should be like. That design, to see that design, what we call town planning, is to manifest, is to be created. That is a physical infrastructure of that township where the potential Mahamanos would be sitting, dwelling on that issue of going up to the higher level of consciousness and setting an example for the rest of the world, while realizing the vision of Shri Aurobindo and Mother, also give an example to the rest of the world. So the Government of India is only doing that part. It cannot do the spiritual part of it. It is beyond government, beyond any agency. But at the same time, it has to ensure that the physical infrastructure which the mother had envisioned according to her design, it has to come up. And I'm glad process has begun. I am very hopeful that soon we will see the township manifesting in its physical domain. And the rest is a continuous process. It's a process that will continue until the people living there, they reach that stage. And having reached that stage, they start spreading their radiance across the world. I wish all of you all the best. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you, Honourable Governor Ravi, for that deeply inspiring talk, which has given us not just much to think about, but also something to put into practical steps for Auroville's future, because as we believe, it is also for the future of the world. Thank you very much, sir. I'm now very happy to introduce Shri Vishal Sharma. Shri Vishal Sharma is India's ambassador, permanent representative to UNESCO. Shri Sharma has a Bachelor of Science in Physics and a certificate in Executive Program in Business Management from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. He was an officer on special duty in Gujarat when Honourable Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the Chief Minister there. He has served as a distinguished member of the governing body of SPIPA, Sardar Patel Institute of Public Administration, for 9 years. Shri Sharma has been an independent director of BPCL, which is Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. In fact, he was one of the youngest people ever to have served on the board of BPCL as a director. Before turning it over to Shri Vishal Sharma, please note that there will be time for questions towards the end of this webinar. So if attendees would kindly post any questions you may have in the Q&A box rather than in the chat box. Shri Sharma will not be joining us online today. So we will now broadcast his recorded message also. Over to you, Vladimir.
Dear friends, excellencies and colleagues, Namaste. The world stands at an inflection point. In this context, the realization of Auroville, the model town envisioned by Maharishi Sri Aurobindo and his spiritual partner, Mira Alpassa from France, known as the Mother, becomes even more relevant for humanity. Auroville has been aimed to fulfill human unity through an integral change of consciousness. This was possible due to an immense yoga, the supramental yoga, which Sri Aurobindo carried out for humanity. I'm concerned with the earth, he would say. It is a terrestrial realization that I seek. not a flight to distant summits. All other yogs regard this life as an illusion or a passing phase. The supramental yoga alone regards it as a thing created by the divine for a progressive manifestation and takes the fulfillment of life and body as its object. The association between Auroville and UNESCO dates back even before the project, before the foundation of Auroville. Since 1966, UNESCO has passed 5 resolutions in support of Auroville. In 1968, the mother, founder of Auroville, appointed Mrs. Kailash Javeri to be the secretary in charge, UNESCO section. And since then, collaboration has continued for over 50 years. The General Assembly of UNESCO unanimously passed resolutions in 1966, 68, 70, and 83 in support of Auroville, inviting member states and international non-governmental organizations to participate in the development of Auroville as an international cultural township designed to bring together the values of different cultures and civilizations in a harmonious environment with integrated living standards that correspond to man's physical and spiritual needs. The 5th resolution, passed on 13th November 2017 at the 39th General Conference of the World Body to commemorate Auroville's 50th year, stated, 28th February 2018 will mark the 50th anniversary of the founding of Auroville, further recognizing that Auroville is a successful and unique model project, proving the capacity of an international community after almost 50 years of existence to continue to live up to its initial founding ideas of peace and international harmony, and which are also UNESCO's own values and principles, as well as some of its major priorities. Invites the Director General to reinforce the association of UNESCO with Auroville and organize commemorative activities for its 50th anniversary, and to re-invite the member states on the special occasion of Auroville's 50th anniversary to participate in Auroville's further development. UNESCO Resolution at 39th General Assembly, 2017. UNESCO has continued to support the foundation of Auroville and over the years has continued to show interest in the unfolding development even as Auroville was declared the Auroville Foundation following an Act of Parliament. The ideals of Auroville and UNESCO have similarities in values and principles. The key aspects of the Auroville experiment resonate strongly with some of UNESCO's major priorities and concerns, such as dialogue among civilizations, cultures, and religions, cultural diversity and culture as a factor for development, poverty eradication, quality education, and lifelong learning and renewable energies. Several events, conferences have been organized over the years in collaboration with Auroville and UNESCO. The Auroville Earth Institute is the UNESCO Chair of Earth Architecture established in Auroville. Unlike many ashrams and communities around the world, Auroville carries a unique legacy for the future as full-fledged city designed to herald the changes the Earth and humanity need consciously and at multiple levels, from education to ecology, from a new urbanism to a shared economy, from a spiritual culture of synthesis to a universal education to ecology, from a new urbanism to a shared economy, from a spiritual culture to a universal senses that embraces the world. Such an experiment has never been tried before, and perhaps now it becomes even more important and necessary to see it realized in its full potential to become a model at the service of humanity and its destiny. The learning of Auroville's 5 decades long journey of experiments for integral and unending education complements the larger goals of UNESCO and its critical goal exemplified by the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and ensure inclusive and quality education for all and promote lifelong learning. During a visit to Auroville, Mr. A. M. Bao from Senegal, then Director General of UNESCO in 1986, said, "You have been able to transcend what yesterday may have been barriers that separated you. You work together, you understand each other, and perhaps you are what I might say, a summing up of the aspiration of the world of tomorrow." In 1998, Federico Mayer, Director General of UNESCO, said, "The Auroville project, situated in Tamil Nadu, South India, which has been supported by the General Conference of UNESCO in 1966, 68, 1970, and 1983, is actively developing according to the basic principles of international understanding and human unity." And in 2008, Mr. Koichiro Matsura, Director General of UNESCO, spoke at the 40th anniversary in Paris. Auroville's ability to survive and evolve over 4 decades bears witness to the strength of the founding principles and the resolve and perseverance of its citizens. In today's globalized world fraught with regional conflicts and economic instability, it is especially reassuring to witness such enduring models of solidarity and humanism. Further, in the words of Mrs. Irina Bukova, Director General of UNESCO in 2014, Shri Aurobindo will also forever be associated with the founding of Auroville, a unique international township founded in 1968 as a place where people from different cultural, educational, and political backgrounds can work together towards the common goal of unity through diversity. I have indeed visited this magical place. Today, this learning and vision continue to draw devotees from the world over, following Sri Aurobindo's profound integral yoga teachings. In 2022, it is Maharishi Sri Aurobindo's 150th birth anniversary. To mark this, Honourable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and his government have already taken steps to honour his legacy by prominently featuring Sri Aurobindo as part of India's Republic Day, and has further supported the Multiversity project to spread his vision and teachings worldwide, and committed to the development of Auroville. Delegates from UNESCO were present at Auroville's inauguration and had met the mother. Today, Sri Aurobindo's statue stands at the Paris UNESCO building at Fontenoy and has been commemorated by our Honourable Prime Minister as well. In this auspicious and critical year for the world, we look forward to a conference dedicated to Sri Aurobindo at UNESCO, Paris, to bring hope, courage, and vision to the people of the world, to foster dialogue as we advance on the path of evolution, on the path of the future that needs the greater light of unity and consciousness. As Sri Aurobindo himself said in his essays on the Gita, we of the coming day stand at the head of a new age of development and a larger synthesis. We do not belong to the past dawns, but to the noons of the future. A mass of new energy is flowing into us. All this points to a very new, and a very vast synthesis. The changes needed require a practical and conscious engagement with the future by initiating new models for society, for education, economy, governance, urban planning, and most importantly, human relationships beyond all divisions. In other words, cities and urban settlements that will not perpetuate the problems of today, but initiate conscious and mindful patterns of harmony and human unity for the future. May Auroville become such a place of light and synthesis and a beacon for the next evolutionary step of the world. Greetings to all from UNESCO, Paris. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shri Vishal Sharma, for that very interesting talk. And I hope You will have many questions. I'm sure there will be. So we kindly request people to post their questions in the Q&A box rather than in the chat box. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our third panelist, Chandresh Patel from Auroville. Mr. Chandresh Patel has been brought up in the Shri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry. He studied engineering at the ashram school and has worked in the Indian industry as a design engineer and later for over 20 years in Silicon Valley in the USA as a systems and networking design entrepreneur. Chandresh was a member of the Shri Aurobindo Association of USA, member treasurer of AVI USA, and also member of AVI. He worked on outreach and fundraising efforts, along with bringing projects and university youth into Auroville for intern projects. Chandresh has moved to Auroville in 2006 and engaged in various social and entrepreneur activities and has worked with various governance and administrative services of Auroville. Over the last 7 years, Chandresh initiated and rolled out the ICICI communication backbone infrastructure of Auroville for a seamless and borderless participation in building Auroville for all friends of Auroville across the world. I will now turn over to Mr. Chandresh Patel. Please go ahead, Chandresh.
Thank you, Anu, for introducing me. So after listening to our Excellency Chairman of the Governing Board, Ravi and Vishal Sharma from UNESCO, we have a very wide and broad and deep understanding of this spiritual project that is Auroville. And what I have been asked to present is the manifestation, the practical manifestation of the city of Auroville. Now, what I will cover is that very briefly to bring everybody up to where we are today. Auroville was manifested in 1968. And for first 3 years, even before the beginning, Mother had worked with our chief architect at the time, Roger Anger, in the galaxy plan. There were several iterations done, and the galaxy plan was chosen together by the Mother along with Roger's interpretation and submission of different varieties. So the vision and the implementation of the galaxy plan over the years had gone through various iteration with the various people on the ground. Now, the master plan was passed by the Residence Assembly of Auroville, and it was subsequently by the Town and Development Council of New Delhi of India, was gazetted in as a master plan, and it's in the Act of Parliament of Auroville Foundation Act. Now, this year, the governing board has, as we heard from Dr. Ravi, has taken up the decision to help implement and manifest the infrastructure, as I mentioned, and the practical aspects of Auroville, given our ground reality and other challenges. So what I will do today is I will give you a brief overview of the various stages that we are currently planning to roll out so that we can begin in a systematic way to develop the city of Auroville. So for any project of this scale, the first area is where we look at the planning. There is a town and development, our ATDC, Auroville Town and Development Council, which are now working on detailed development plans so that the rollout of the city can begin. Now, this one is very interestingly done this time through. The implementation process has been done with a community participation. What is known right now, they have done a dream weaving process to come up with urban design parameters given for the various zones, sectors, and this will happen in different phases as we move along in the implementation. And so the Town Development Council is the body that will then bring together the urban design guidelines, and they will work with the and they will prepare the final brief that the Vastu Shilpa consultants will develop the detailed design plan. Now, for any project of this scale, like a city that is being under development, you need to have a very detailed development plan on which we can then depend on to acquire the proper parameters and see how to we can slowly in phase manner start developing. And any of the land consolidation that needs to happen, that needs to be looked into based on this, so it becomes easier to plan properly the infrastructure. As most of us would appreciate and understand that any greenfield project, any new project that we start, would need to have very proper infrastructure, because you can't have a haphazard, build up areas in pockets, and then you have to spend more effort trying to have an integrated infrastructure available to connect the fabric and the backbone of the master plan. So currently our priority and focus will be two prong. One is the urban design parameters, and the second one is the infrastructure corridor, the right of way that says, okay, this is the area for which we will reserve the spaces for the infrastructure, so that it's planned and it's laid properly. The mobility, the pathway, and how the look and feel will happen is part of the design urban crownway and future needs that may change over time. So this right of way clearing of the infrastructure, another priority of development, in which areas, which sectors, what to develop, is now currently under process and review. And the focus currently is on the residential zone, because to build a city, to even design the plan, we need a team of technical and skilled resources. So basically, the human resources that will help build this whole the planning and implementation phases at the various levels, which it's a very big complex project. And the Town Development Council has come up with 6 major areas of team development, and within each team they have a placeholder for 10 people, and together almost 500 to 600 young technical people could work on this for the full manifestation, but this will be done in phases. So that is currently now planned out, it's developed how it will happen. Once the detailed development plan comes, infrastructure and other things are developing, it will start rolling out. So what we are looking at is to, currently Auroville is very vast. It is engaged in many different areas, but for development in the manifestation of the practical manifestation of the city, we are looking to bring in volunteers from across India, from other countries, and who would like to engage and who have experience or would like to provide the technical expertise in the field of design in terms of economy and bringing together the various aspects of construction and work. And also we are looking to get units and services of Auroville, coordinate the work with these volunteers and staff, so that cohesively various services and other things can work together. And we'll also would like to set up apprentice program within these unit services, so that and other walks, all the areas and walks of life of Auroville, so that a very learned and trained resource becomes available. We are also preparing materials and platforms, so that there can be online and on-site vocational training and other fields. Of course, this ties into the multiversity platform also that is currently being launched. So next, what we are trying to focus in parallel at this point is to come up with a set of houses, hostels for volunteers, those who can give time for 3 months or 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, and then housing for newcomers, those who are aspiring, those who want to aspire in joining Auroville and join this experiment. So we are trying to focus on residential zone 1 and 2 right now to develop it and plan for it, and that is undergoing. Because without places to stay, volunteers and newcomers find it very difficult, extremely hard to find places to stay. And once somebody doesn't have a place to stay, they are not settled in, and then it becomes difficult. The productivity is affected. So first focus is in part of bringing together the human resource, is to provide accommodation for them. So this is happening right now in parallel to prepare for that. And so we are currently looking at volunteer hostels on the outskirts of the master plan, and in a very prefabricated cluster of hostels. So it's not really necessarily comfort housing, but mostly to help people come in, get engaged, and work on it. And so then also, of course, residential staff quarters in various zones and sectors of the city. And also along with that, some areas of residential zone 1 and 2 are being looked into, and a few projects that were in pipeline that are also being released. So really the practical manifestation is now beginning. Now, as I mentioned before, for any greenfield project, we need to have proper infrastructure. When you are building houses, when you're building schools, when you're building housing or other administrative buildings, other things, you need to have a proper integrated infrastructure. You need the water, you need electricity, you need communication, you need sewage, you need storm water, then you need mobility, e-mobility, cycle paths, walking, and then green buffers, which are all part of the master plan. They have to have a proper design of the infrastructure. The right of way where these things will come has to be first and foremost put on the ground, so that the master plan can begin to develop from that. So the current the master plan that was gazetted as part of the Foundation Act has, and it's actually the skeletal fabric of the Galaxy plan, which has the planned crown, the crownway, the radials, the ring road. So these infrastructures have to be now starting to be put into the ground, so that urban fabric can then start building on from that. And of course, the support services and the linkages to develop the various zones and sectors also need to be now done in priority, so that we don't take up everything. We do it in phases and priority, but the clearing and everything has to be done properly, so that there are no more blockages to be able to develop what is needed down the road. So we have to enable construction for housing, buildings, as I mentioned before, and public places, and also plan for e-mobility in a phase-wise deployment along the crown and radials. Now, for any large-scale project and sustenance of the technical staff, the volunteers, Aurovillians, and all the labor and contractors, we need a proper sustainable economy. Okay, so in any large project, and so next focus is, we have also started in parallel, is to see how to bring about a sustainable economy for Aurovillians and skilled volunteers and staff who are coming together to build the city. So one of the areas we are looking at is how to leverage knowledge economy, so that we can provide spaces for ideation, prototyping labs, fab labs, design centers. As I mentioned before, bring about apprenticeship programs so the young people can work hands-on at the various units and services, vocational trainings, agroforestry, try and bring about, and grow an economy that will allow diversity and yet engagement for a sustainable city development. And of course, we need to also see if we can tie up with the leading institutes of India and the world with online, very proper infrastructure that we have in communication that is coming up, some leadership, entrepreneurship programs, and also, Auroville is into 50 years of manifestation, slowly built up. We have units, we have other flourishing and established units and services. So we also need to start seeing how we can bring young people to do a succession planning, do a focused strategic growth, and then support and fund those which are identified as up and coming initiatives, so that together very with focus we can develop the economy. And also, of course, instead of venture capital program, we should try and bring about social venture programs, maybe even look at design outsourcing for creative ideas when, people from various cultures and background come together. And if we have a Fab Lab with integrated living setup, there can be a lot of creative collaboratory experiences, and it can have many designs which are new and which can be then maybe done into manufacturing with the royalties set up with outside industries. So all these are possibilities that we are looking at and seeing how we can nurture it and grow. And then finally, Auroville is an international city, and the whole idea is that with the diversity that the human race provides, we would like to also bring in students and who can become the future residents or volunteers. So tie up some university programs and semester programs from across the globe. Even when I was in US, we had started that processes even 15, 20 years back. And that needs to be addressed more. Now that the COVID international travel may open up slowly, these things have to be brought in, and then student university can maybe do a semester program in design or economy or sustainable development or alternative energy. So there are a lot of possibilities that Auroville can offer for an student exchange programs for universities. And multiversity, maybe will expand this maybe more formally as Auroville being one of the hubs of the multiversity web. And then, as I mentioned before, we have set up a fiber communication infrastructure so that true borderless participation is possible to build and engage with Auroville from anywhere in the world. And that is slowly becoming very possible and realizable. And this is one of the, our international webinar series for the 150th anniversary, and is one of the examples of moving towards that. Then, of course, continuing education for the people, the residents, then exchange of excellence and talents in various exchange programs, and in arts and culture, sciences and consciousness studies can also start developing. Now, other area that Auroville, that mother had actually set up was the international zone. Now, international zone catered to the researchers into the group soul, the national soul, what the essence that each group consciousness is trying to manifest. Individual also have an expression of the divine. The group consciousness also does that. And so we have to do researches on that, experience that, what does it mean? And those are areas that are also something that we would like to see open up slowly in Auroville. So researchers into the national group souls and human unity via the international pavilions, which will host programs and researchers into that. So with this, I would like to hand over I would like to conclude my presentation, and Anu, please take over.
Thank you, Chandresh. That was a very vivid outline and practical map for the next years of Auroville. Thank you. And just as Matri Mandir was once thriving work center, let us hope that the whole city and its green belt will also become over the years a thriving space of creativity, work, life, all centered in the joy and the peace of the new consciousness, which is Auroville. So next we have our final panelist, Jaya from Auroville. Jaya is a pioneer for the city that the earth needs. She came to Auroville as a young girl at the age of 19. From the very first meeting with the mother, she knew that this was her path of life and this was whom she wanted to serve. Over the years, she has worked in many fields: education, construction, business, organization. She has always had several commitments and projects, taking care of a small piece of forest, building her house and planting the land, as well as raising her family with 4 children and her husband, Nico. She then became involved with the international zone, and by the end of the 90s, this led to the Unity Pavilion project. Since the completion of the main Unity Hall and the Hall of Peace, the Unity Pavilion has been hosting peace meditations and peace-related activities and trainings, cultural events in collaboration with the International Zone Pavilion groups. And since a few years, she has now been exploring the city as well and its planning, and has hosted several exhibitions on the city and its different aspects. Today, she will share something with you from the exhibition that is ongoing right now during the birthday week. So it's over to you, Jaya. Please go.
Okay, thank you. So I am Jaya, and I'm sitting here with a book in front of me. It is the master plan, the first master plan from 1971. And this plan starts with why Auroville, and then it presents a dream, the text that Mother gave in 1974. And following that is the Auroville Charter. And I want to say something because this is the foundation for the city. The master plan, not the master plan, the Auroville Charter is the impact that this city has to have. This is what will happen because of this city. A place which doesn't belong to anybody. And the dream is the outcome which has to be in place for the charter to happen. Can I move it a little bit? Yeah. So we have the impact, we have the outcome, we know what has to come in place. And we also know in the world today, it is not so easy to do these things. Already in 1912, Mother was working with a group, and she tells how people would come to her and say that we want to live this life, we want to do it, but it's so difficult and impossible in the world. So when we build this city, and that's why the master plan is so important, the galaxy, because this city is collaborating with the human beings who live in it. It's not just a place to house people, to go to work. It's buildings, it's being built by consciousness. So the buildings are supportive, the environment, the whole city is actually supporting people, and people are creating it. It's always a two-way action. It is very interesting when we look at Roger, because when we study him and his work, we see that he's an artist, he's working with beauty. I have been to his office in Auroville, and it is the most playful, beautiful place I've seen. I felt it was the kindergarten that I wanted to go to as a child, to really grow from that space. He works from the human scale, which is very important. He works in collaboration with people. He has an office in Paris with I think 100 people working with. He works with artists. We can see it in his work. He works very early with alternative materials, earth, ferrous cement, etc. He plays with forms. And for example, in the towers in Grenoble, which was a very important work that he did, we see how he takes this forest, which is in the city, and he actually manages to put the buildings and make them in such a way that you can house the people, but most of this forest can be kept. So he's very early working with all those elements of Auroville, even before Auroville. And he's very open and instrumental for Mother. We have just now put up an exhibition in the Unity Pavilion, which is showing most of the drawings that we still have from Rocher's in Chaplin's collection. And we have put it in such a way that you can actually, one part is that you can see the development from the first drawings he brings to Mother, where there is the square city, rectangular square city, and then there is the nebula. This rectangular city is immediately said no to by Mother. And then the work goes on with the with the nebula. And then you see how it moves into the macro structure. And then the next step, which is the galaxy, what we have. So one can see how Mother's guidance follows the whole way. Sometimes people are not sometimes often saying, yes, but is it so important if it is here or there, or if this road is round or this or that? How should we say, the bones of the city are very, very important. This is a matter of energy and movement. We have the Matrimandir at the center, and from there it moves. It is, when one goes into studying it, it is a matrix. It is highly symbolic and it's an absolutely living symbol. And we have seen through research that I have been involved with also, that when we take those elements of the city and we bring them into application as tools that we develop, they have a tremendous power and force. They work from unity. Before that, we had always tried to work towards unity, from division to unity, and we have always failed. I don't think in a single place in the world we have actually managed to make peace. Managed to stop war, but not managed to make peace. With these tools, we actually can go very deeply and very fast. And they work from unity. So it's seeing even a little bit of this in practical reality between people. One feels the importance because we are just touching the surface of knowledge about these things today. There are much deeper layers that as our consciousness grows, we will be able to touch on. I also wanted to say something about, because I happen to have this wonderful master plan, which is hand-drawn. We had one copy in Auroville, which was eaten by termites, but still being used. And this copy I received in Sweden must have been 2006 or 7, from Vera Heidenmo, who was the lady, Swedish lady you can read about in the agenda also. And she had brought this material. Yes. This is the drawing of the roads you have here. So this is an overlap on butter paper on the galaxy you have here. And here you see the road. So this is from 1971. All this is in place at that time. You can also notice that at this time, the green belt is yet not there. Green belt is still to come, but we have not that has still not come down. Also, I will say what is important in my experience is the fact that when many people are not visionary in the sense that they can see something which is unfinished and have a sense of what is coming. So when people look at the galaxy model, they see concrete. They see these white things and they think that it's all this concrete. And then they think that maybe all these little squiggles have to be exactly in those places. That is not how it is at all. The movements have to be there. This is very, very, very clear how it comes. The zones are there. These are the big, important things. Everything is important, of course. But we, the architects, the people who live here, have a lot of input into how this is formed. For me, one example is with the African pavilion, because I have worked with that quite a lot. And there was the drawing which was made by Shri for the international zone. There was a certain buildings drawn out. When we had the African architects who were here, who did the study for it, they took the parameters for the international zone, for the African pavilion. It was the circle, which is given. Everybody was complaining about, how can you have only round houses? How will there only be triangular? Why will there only be squares? Architects will be so limited. When you look into the symbolism of these forms, and when you look at what the African architects did, the African pavilion follows the land that was given. They never questioned that. They did a pavilion for Africa, which means it didn't belong to any specific countries, not like we are working with European. And this was something Rocher really wanted. I remember Tekeste, who was at that time holding it, had been speaking with Rocher, and Rocher said, no, you look for unity, you look for unity. And the drawings which we have of the buildings, there are some round buildings, but it's not all round buildings, but there is a form of the circle which goes into it. And Rocher was very happy with these pavilions. I always use that as an example. And yes, what more would I like to say? Yes, my involvement actually with the city came from the international zone. In the 90s, I started to work as coordinator for the international zone, which I actually ended up doing for a long time. I came to know Kailash Javeri from this work. And I saw that we were talking about unity and we were dreaming about unity, but we actually didn't know how to do it. We still kept looking from our own angle. You know, international zone is very small. There will be about 200, if we don't even talk cultures or countries. But so we'll have to have a place. But we were all kind of going out on the land and looking out, where is a nice spot for my pavilion and how will my garden be, or our garden? And my thought was, how do we turn the consciousness in such a way that that pavilion which comes last gets the best place? Because we want them to be here, because we long for them to be part, and it's very difficult for them to come, maybe financing like that. So this work, and then came up the thing about the shapes for the city. And there was a lot of outcry because it felt it was limiting the architectural possibility. But when you look in the world, what limitations brings about impossibility, it is tremendous, actually. You look at the buildings in Singapore and Hong Kong, and these fantastic buildings. So it's I think that those things which we see as limitations are not, they're actually pressing us to transcend our own limitations. And the city is built with consciousness, for consciousness, and is part of that consciousness. It's absolutely built together. Thank you.
I think when you bring back the international zone after the Matri Mandir, that was the very first thing that the mother started. So there's a lot to be done there, and I'm so glad that you are seated in the center of the international zone and thinking about it now. I can see many questions popping up, both in the chat box and in the Q&A. So shall we just go over to Ravi, who's going to take over the question answer part. Before we go ahead, perhaps I'll do that last, after the question and answer. Ravi, why don't you go with the question and answers first?
Sure, Anu. Thank you so much. And any questions that are in the chat box, if you could kindly put them in the Q&A. There's a little Q&A section at the bottom, and you just click on that, and you'll be able to type them in, and that way we can find all the questions there. And before beginning the questions, I also want to mention that I have put in the chat box the link to where you can find all these recorded sessions for the week. We've gotten many emails asking where they can be found. So there is a link in there for all attendees, and we'll be circulating that also in an upcoming email. So please, any questions, post in the Q&A. And at this time, Chandresh, if you and Jaya could please open your mic and also your video so that you can answer any questions here that may come up. And I'll just give Jaya here a second to also come in. And while she's getting settled, Chandresh, let me ask you this first question. Question about how we can help in building Aurovilles. What kind of skills, money, labor, who should they contact? Perhaps you can share that information with our attendees.
Sure, thank you. So what we are doing, as I was presenting, first of all, let me say I'm so sorry that I forgot to turn the sharing on my presentation on. So people were just looking at me talking, but my presentation was only in my screen and not for everybody. But what I would like to respond with is that we are working on a few long-term, long-impact projects, such as I said, the volunteer hostels, then incubation center, and data administration, IT infrastructure. So there are a few groundbreaking projects that we're going to start. We're preparing a business plan for them. So we would like to have seed funding, at least in the next few months, so that we can prepare it and finalize it so that the final project plans can be done. That's one area. Another area is we definitely would like to invite young people from across the world, across India, so that if they're interested, we can, as we build the youth hostel, the volunteer hostel, they can start staying there and start engaging with Auroville and trying to see where they can engage. So those are the two areas where we would like to see. Now, there was a newsletter launch called Auroville Tomorrow by one of our outreach media team, and that will talk about future looking and positive impact projects that are oncoming. And people can subscribe to that, and then that will then be the link to with our friends of Auroville and donors to see and how to engage with us.
Perfect, thank you. And perhaps you've answered this other question here in that perhaps it's going to be in the Auroville Tomorrow newsletter, but they're asking if there's going to be a portal for volunteers who are willing to work offline or online, and where they can register.
So there is another website that we have, manifestingauroville.com, and maybe that would be a proper placeholder to maybe have a sections on how we can collaborate. I'll talk to the team who's managing the manifestingauroville.com and see if they can look into this area.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because I think there's many of us that would like to support this effort from abroad and would need to be able to do it online.
Sure.
So I'm just kind of sorting through here the chat. I don't see any questions in the chat box. And we are just about on time. And Chandresh, even though you didn't show your video, it was an excellent presentation. So please, no worries, and we'll send out a link to the presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. So if there are no other questions, and I would just say, Jaya, is there anything else that you would like to say at this time?
No, not especially.
Okay.
I could talk endlessly about it. It's very dear to my heart. But I think that we're quite good.
Very good. And we could listen endlessly. Did a marvelous job. Thank you so much. So with that, then we will bring our program to a conclusion, and I'm going to turn it back over to Anu, who will make an announcement and close our session for us. Anu?
So it's true, it's been such an enriching session today, starting from the Vedic rishis to Shri Aurobindo to the perspective from the UNESCO and on the ground from Chandresh and Jaya. And I'd like to thank especially our honorable guests for their time and very valuable contributions. So we close our webinar this evening with a reminder that tomorrow evening our topic is spiritual significance of Auroville city, with guest speakers Dana Miriam, member of the International Advisory Council, Manoj Pavitran of Purnam Swadhyaya, and Muriel Dion from Auroville, who is working at Savitri Bhavan. So we close the program today with a group meditation.